Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alexandra, Jeff, Omar. Appreciate you guys joining us. So this is the weekly Cyber Bulls space that we're doing. And boy, every single week, it's just amazing movement that's happening with Tesla. We just absolutely, I personally do love wartime CEO Elon Musk. He's been making some major moves, as many of it have already heard, and we've reported a few times, is the tectonic move in China. Them preliminary approval for a full self-driving in China. Today we've heard, I think it's more than just rumors, but there's actually screenshots that South Korea could be the fourth country to also approve full self-driving. Some more layoffs have happened, of course, and we need to discuss what's happening with the supercharger team. It sounds like 500 people might have been let go because of the people that were working there have been making posts. We don't know for sure if that's exactly what has happened, but Elon did reply just a few minutes ago, a few hours ago, that he did say that superchargers will grow, continue to grow, albeit slower than the previous pace, and they'll focus on making sure that the uptime of existing locations are better, and that they'll have more locations for that as well. There's just a number of other big movements as well. I'm expecting another drop of a demo for the Tesla bot. We haven't seen one in a while. Just amazing things. So let's start with you, Alexandra. What's your thoughts on all these things that happened just in the last several days here?
I will answer your questions, I promise, in a second. I just want to address that the proxy votes have started. So the Robinhood accounts got their emails yesterday and could start voting. We have until beginning of June to vote. So if you haven't gotten anything yet from Schwab and so many others, be patient, look out for them this week. If you haven't gotten anything by the beginning of next week, I would start contacting them and asking what's happening. There are two ways of voting. Either you get it by, you just click on the link and you're usually transferred to the SAY platform and you see the 12 questions there and you decide whether you want to vote for or against those proposals. And the second way is to contact your broker and get a control number. And with that control number, you can go on a website that is called proxyvotes.com, enter that control number and vote there. That's a little bit more complicated, and people usually prefer waiting for the email and the link from their brokers, but both are valid. So please do that, because we want to make sure we get as many retail investors voting. We've posted loads of instructions on how to do it under the handle #VotedTesla24. Also for Europeans, also for Asians, also for any kind of brokerage accounts. When you have voted, or if you have any information, use the same hashtag so that people can find that information if they're looking for it. It would really be great if we get above the typical 29% of retail votes, because this one matters. A deal is a deal. Obviously, you vote as you want, but please vote. So to get to your questions, Herbert, and thank you for letting me start with that. I mean, I'm always very emotional when I hear these layoffs, just because I'm an emotional old lady. But what gave me some peace of mind was the article today by Bloomberg. I'm usually not a huge friend of Dana Hull, and she's usually quite critical on Elon. But she summed up a couple of points that were I think important to know. The first one is that they have decided, obviously, that they are coming to a point in time where the focus is much more on uptime and expansion of existing locations rather than growing new locations, which I think makes sense, makes also sense financially for us. The second point is that they are already considering rehire some of this stuff. So what seems to have happened is everybody was let go, and then we're seeing who we're going to hire back. I'm not sure this is efficient. I have no opinion on this. I will just have to live with that. And then the third point is that this is actually a huge blow to EVs from other OEMs, because they were now laying back, not considering much more investments into charging stations, and they just threw the bone to Tesla, and this is gonna make their life actually a little bit more difficult. So I encourage everybody to read that article. It's paywalled, but I screenshot it until the day I'm going to be told to not do that anymore. But at the moment, I'm still doing that. And I posted that just a couple of minutes ago. It's well worth your read.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate you talking about the voting, because that is absolutely the most important event that we need to stay aware of and know what to do. Thank you for that. Jeff, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, couple things on the layoffs. They are unfortunate. I wouldn't be kind of celebrating or joking about them online. And from, you know what I mean? Like, there's people commenting on them like these aren't real people. They're real people. Not everybody's set up for life because you work in a Silicon Valley company, and they've got to figure out what they're doing next. And it's a problem. It's an issue for a lot of people to be let go. It's not a fun experience. But I will give a different perspective than maybe I've heard from others today, because I've done a lot of business. I've had teams in China. I've had teams in South Korea for over a decade. I've been to both countries, probably 100 times. That's who we're competing with. We are competing against the Chinese and against the South Koreans on the auto side, probably on the robotics side, and on the autonomy side. The competition in the U.S. is pretty much just a non-factor, and the way that if you studied or worked alongside or competed against a South Korean company and how they work, or a really well run Chinese company, you'll see that they're absolutely brutal when it comes to expense management, when it comes to changing direction rapidly, and that's the competition. They want to kill Tesla. They want to kill their competition. They want to dominate. China wants to, they're now a net exporter. And, clearly the government is behind EVs, and China is a global leader in EV, like Tesla, in terms of being a brand, is a global leader and a company. So that's the competition. They run their business dramatically differently when it comes to dealing with labor, when it comes to making big decisions, and again, when it comes to expense management. And I think what companies are kind of seeing is what's happening with the investment needed in generative AI. I think the numbers are just astronomical, and they've got to figure out a way to generate that or make that available, in their expense budget. So sometimes you have to take a fresh look at things. I mean, you have to question, like, well, what's triggering all this in the last couple of weeks? And there's maybe some valid questions about that. Like, why now? Why not, at a major inflection point, kind of end of year? Why, April, May? It's hard to say, but again, who we're competing against are ruthless when it comes to this stuff, and they have a completely different approach, and their cost centers. I mean, 500 people based in China or even based in South Korea. That cost center versus 500 people, mostly in the probably in the Bay Area. I mean, it's going to be an outrageous differential. It's going to be huge. So it'll be interesting to see what Tesla's actually doing next. I would also caution, like, the first reports from the battlefield are usually wrong, and to kind of just wait and listen and understand and let them explain, like, ultimately what they're going to do. See people like, oh, this is a huge mistake, and oh, this or that. Like, we actually don't know what they're doing. Again, they've managed the company to be the number one EV manufacturer in the world, and they probably have a lead the ability to deploy autonomy globally. So I think they've earned enough credibility for us to like at least give them the opportunity to articulate their plan going forward. But like during these periods, like when he's literally in the point of like writing an email and informing the team, yeah, you got to let that play out. You got to let it, you know, you got to let it play out, and you got to give the people the respect they deserve, and you know, we'll figure it out from there. But again, it just the Chinese and the Koreans, they're ruthless. They're ruthless with expense management, and that's who Tesla's competing against.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, when you step back and think about this, right? I absolutely love and just appreciate everything that wartime CEO Elon Musk is doing. He is likely the best, executive, chief executive founder of the best companies in the world. So we trust what he's doing, and he knows what he's doing, and he's done everything right. Many things right, not everything, of course, but things are going really well. And I like the way, Omar, you've been, kind of rephrasing, refocusing people's attentions when they focus on the little things instead of the big things that are happening. Can you give us a little bit more of that as well? How do you see the world of Tesla these days?
Well, I think that really, I went to Best Buy yesterday with my dad. We had to go return something. And we got in the car in the Best Buy parking lot in his Hardware 3 Model S. And we sat there and we said, all right, take me home. And I pushed a button and it just drove us home and it parked. And that was it. From parking spot to parking spot, we didn't have to touch anything. So this is possible today. They have multiple, major new updates coming. This is probably, I think, the single most important new technology that is being developed right now across the tech industry, honestly. Look at what Apple's doing, look at what Google's doing. It's nothing compared to the level of growth I think we could see here. So the entire company is being refocused around this. Okay, this is the FSD company now. And a lot of people who have been following the company for a long time, who are experts on EVs, they don't really get it. So there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of negativity. You see so many people saying Elon's lost it. They're going to abandon superchargers. They're not going to build superchargers anymore. What's going to happen? This is a disaster. Superchargers are still going to be there. They're still going to continue to expand. They're not going to forget how to build superchargers. 90% of the takes I've seen on this are moronic, to say the least. The reality is, Tesla generated $1 billion of free cash flow in the last year. These actions, laying people off, that cause people to be angry at Elon and say he's lost his mind, these are the hard decisions that are the difference between a company being successful and a company failing. The difference between a company living and a company dying. Just this last week, he said in a response to me that the company plans to spend $10 billion on AI compute this year. That's between the inference compute that goes in the car, which obviously the customers pay for, and the training compute that they're building to support FSD. So you want to invest $10 billion in AI, right? And the team there, they're now getting a sense of what they need to do to achieve FSD. They can use scaling laws and they can see how much FSD is improving as they add more data, as they add more compute, and they have a sense for what they need. So you've got a decline in the core business where sales are falling year over year, and you want to continue to invest majorly in AI, and something's kind of got to give. If you just look at the operational summary in the shareholder deck, production's down 2% year over year. Deliveries are down 9% year over year. Inventory's up 80% year over year in terms of days of supply. And supercharger networks and service locations are up 24%. Now, If your vehicle sales aren't growing as fast as you expected, you just don't need to build as many superchargers. It's kind of an obvious place to save money. And this allows them to invest more in the things they need to invest in and fortify the balance sheet in case things get worse. This will help make sure that they don't post a loss in the coming quarters if sales don't improve materially. So I'm holding out judgment until we understand more about what the strategy is. A lot of people are saying this is going to be a disaster. I remember when people told me that the X layoffs were going to be a disaster. But here we are. I see 500 people in this room all on X. X is still running. So I have a feeling that, again, just like when we saw these stories about the affordable model being canceled, that ended up being completely wrong. The supercharging network is not going anywhere just because they did some layoffs and cost cuts. They're trying to manage the ship through a storm. And I think they're going to get through this storm much better than anybody else because they're willing to do what others aren't willing to do. And I, just kind of roll my eyes at people who know how to run the company without understanding all of the information that's factoring into this decision or what the strategy really is going forward. Like a lot of people aren't talking about, for example, the deals they have with BP, other companies, whether there might be a way to continue to expand charging in a way that's not as capital intensive.
Yeah, and I agree with those points. It's really hard to like be on the outside of this and to say, oh, this is, great, or this is terrible, or like you really have to like understand what the next steps are. The only other comment I was going to make was around just the approach of, if you do a large, sometimes in management, you could go in with a scalpel or you can go in with a machete. And sometimes there is an approach to go in and like overcut or just like do a large reduction and then figure out, did anything critical break? I mean, I think Tesla knows their business well enough to do that, but there is a kind of a known like approach to like, just go in and like do a very large reduction and then kind of build up again from first principles. So it's not unheard of. I've seen it. I've actually administered it once, and unfortunately, you sometimes you have to do that, and you learn things. But it's also a great way to get rid of some excess. But you have to do it in a respectful way to the employees, and more so a respectful way to the employees that are remaining. Like, okay, what are we doing? Like, what's the direction moving forward? So yeah, I just want to make that comment that it's not like this is unheard of. I'm surprised at the stock reaction. To be honest with you, I think people are absurd to sell off on the news that Tesla is, is basically getting fit from an OpEx perspective. Again, this is all OpEx, but I mean, this is all optics, excuse me. But normally when companies do this, they get, cheered by markets of like, all right, they're controlling expenses. Here it's like, oh my God, like it's almost like the collective markets know like they could, like there's a management problem here. Like, well, no, actually they're going to be, if you look on the other side of this and you look at what they've done, we don't even know what the real numbers are, by the way. This could be in excess of $2 billion of OpEx. I don't know, with people with spreadsheets, are they doing the math on the other side of this of like what is operating margin going to be on the other side of this? What's, or is it, it could be offset with more spend. That could be part of the challenge as well. But regardless, when you get fit, and you get rid of this from the bottom line, there are a lot of efficiencies you will gain. So I just don't hear enough of that. I just hear like, people concerned, like they almost like they have their finger on the pulse of like how a supercharger business should be run, and Tesla just stepped in it. Like, well, actually, let's hear what the plan is going forward. But anyway, I'm surprised at the market reaction, Herbert.
Yeah, and I actually think that, if you look at it in perspective, it's such a small deal when you look at the bigger picture, right? Which is, where are they spending the money? The reason that they did the layoff, the 10% layoff, is they're saving $1 billion. They're putting it on AI. So if they were not investing $10 billion in AI this year, if they weren't attempting to get the Optimus bot in a factory by the end of this year and actually sold to customers by next year, if they weren't having, going all in on Robotaxi and making sure that full program can be launched or at least announced with a Robotaxi vehicle by August, and then signing the deals or making sure that China, South Korea, and I'm sure other countries will fall, and then for them to say that I've got these new vehicle models coming out in the existing factories. The unboxed model is still on its way, and we have a dedicated Robotaxi. I can keep going on. These kinds of trade-offs, that's what it needed to happen, and he's making the right moves. At the end of the day, these are massive tectonic changes that has happened to the company in the last week or so. I wanted to ask you guys, Alexandra and Omar, which one of these things that I just mentioned, and maybe I haven't mentioned something, which one are the ones that you think are the most impactful, the most, surprising to you?
I actually agree with all three of you. We are certainly at an inflection point where not only product and services are shifting, but also probably the regional priorities. I think it's not a coincidence that Elon postponed the India trip. I think it's going to come this year for sure, but obviously it wasn't on his priority list, to then suddenly do a 24-hour trip to China, which is not around the corner either, to get this announcement. And I don't think we know everything yet what's going to happen in China. I think there's more to come. So I do believe it's not only a shift in products and services, but it's also a shift in priority of certain zones in the world and playing ones against the others, because I'm sure India is watching what's happening in China. I do believe the Europeans are suddenly waking up to not wanting to be the last ones to consider FSD supervised. So I do believe there's a lot of 3D or 4D chess happening, not only on products and services, but also on regional engagements. I'm sure Mexico is not happy that the Gigafactory is not happening as quickly as they had hoped for. I mean, so many things are tense, and having been now in this stock for 4 years, usually when it's tense, there's something coming out in the end because something is really shifting.
Okay, and then Omar, did you want to answer that question as well? Was there something that you think you were very surprised with, and how big of a deal is the FSD developments in China?
It's huge, and I mean, the sentiment on this thing is so funny. Like, people truly do not understand what's going on here. Most of the discourse I see is just people just completely out of their depth. And, a lot of times people who are huge experts in EVs, but this is just a very different game here. And it's very tough to understand the subtleties. You see journalists writing about, oh, Mercedes is so far ahead, just, clearly not knowing what they're talking about. And I mean, in the past week, we've seen not only FSD doing extremely well here in the United States and Canada, but we've seen FSD running in Germany, demoed to regulators there, the Swiss or Swedish Transportation Authority or something like that, who was actually an ex-Apple guy. So, pretty good person to show who could maybe convince his colleagues. But they said it was running in Germany. They showed a video and they said there was, one intervention in a 45-minute drive that was non-safety critical just to let a car in that was trying to get in. So essentially, it's almost performing as well in Europe as it is here in the United States. And they had a video of it handling a roundabout. Then now they've got approval to launch in China as well. So This is huge for a number of reasons. Number one, the mapping issue in China, where only certain companies are licensed to handle mapping data. The partnership with Baidu opens the door for them to actually offer FSD supervised on city streets. So that's huge. Then the data security approval, that Tesla's the only foreign automaker of the ones they announced that have the relevant automotive security clearance. This clears up some of the restrictions on Tesla going into secured areas, government buildings, stuff like that. So that's great to see those restrictions removed. It eliminates one reason not to choose a Tesla if you're in China and, for example, you work in a government facility where Teslas are restricted or something. Them now having this ability is great. And what they've actually done is they now have the technology to take those images and actually blur out faces and blur out sensitive information on the car's inference computer. And they're then able to upload that data, and the receiving end never actually sees that personally identifiable information because it was blurred right on the car. And this allows them to then take the data and train on it in their training centers in the US and begin deploying and testing those models in China. So for years and years, we've invested billions and billions of dollars, $10 billion cumulatively, in developing this technology. But our ability to raise revenue for it has been limited to 33% of our customer base, the US, which is really the slowest to adopt EVs. Now we're going to go very quickly from one major market supporting FSD to three major markets. And so you'd expect the financials to probably double or triple or more as it became something that could roll out across the world. FSD seems to be able to work across the world with minimal adaptation, which is incredible. And you're seeing them now start to launch subscriptions in China for enhanced autopilot. I think they're geared up to launch FSD subscriptions. So, it's really a material event. If they can take this technology and scale it globally, the market, essentially the total addressable market grows, I think, at least twice as large. So it's very significant in them sort of refocusing the company around AI. And honestly, there's no other system in the world that's running all across the world. Waymo only runs here in the United States. You've got some Waymo-like companies that only run in China. Nobody's doing driving using end-to-end AI around the world. So I think the market doesn't quite appreciate how special this is yet, but some people are starting to. And I think that's why you saw such a large one-day move yesterday, coupled with, just general confusion in the media about why the move is so large. They don't understand the significance of Tesla emerging as the global self-driving leader. Their technology is more advanced than Waymo. It's more advanced than any of the other Chinese ADAS companies. And yet I'm seeing the complete opposite reported in the media. This is, I think, the big story here. And everything else, charging team, whatever, is really kind of a distraction.
Yep,
Uh,
it's noise. Yeah, I
can I,
agree. As painful as it is to those affected, it's noise.
well, I want to ask you three, with Tesla winning the backing of the Chinese government for FSD, I personally think that this is going to just open up many Chinese automakers licensing this technology from Tesla. The Chinese automakers they recognize that the EV electric vehicle revolution is big, and that's why they're succeeding and winning. But if they don't have autonomy, then they can lose. But if they have autonomy, then they're going to be able to sell that car globally. Do you guys think that that's what's going to happen? Or do you believe that, again, Chinese automakers will be last? It's going to be American because FSD is really structured more for the US. Who here thinks that Chinese automakers will line up to be a license with Tesla?
Absolutely. I think what people don't understand about the licensing opportunity is that Tesla is the only company in the world who can deliver this solution right now. If you're a Chinese EV company, and the Chinese EV companies have seen growth stall in the domestic market with such high competition, they've begun focusing on exports. They're now exporting to Europe. They're now exporting to South America and they're eyeing an entry into North America through Mexico. Now, if you want to sell an ADAS software that can do self-driving in all three of those markets, in China, but also in Europe and North America, you've got two choices: Tesla or Tesla.
You had me there for a second, dude. Okay, Jeff and Alexandra.
Yeah, no, I think they will line up, and I think they'll integrate faster. They move faster. Their cycles are all faster. If they're doing, if they're doing hardware design, everything's local. Everything's done much more quickly. We see that in other technologies. So from a hardware integration perspective, they may move more quickly. But I think Tesla's priorities are, number one is to expand Tesla's presence in FSD and autonomy globally. And then, and I'm not saying it's a serial event. I think they're talking to partners right now, but I think their priorities are to expand them, for themselves, and then bring on the partnerships. And I think a lot of people are confused. They think like there's no money that moves hands, early on, and that all depends on how the deal is structured. And so anyway, it'd be interesting to see how they're approaching this. And again, I think a lot of companies, if you look at the earnings reports, it's Amazon just reported, Google reported last week, Meta reported, and all the hyperscalers, Microsoft, they're all increasing their spend on generative AI, meaning they're buying more supercomputers, they're buying more GPUs and supercomputers and network infrastructure, and they're all increasing their spend. They all had a number in a box, and they all increased that number. And Amazon just did it after hours today. So Tesla, I mean, you don't even hear another automaker that's anywhere in the zip code of what Tesla is doing. Hosting their own supercomputer, their own, full end-to-end inference and network infrastructure. There's no one even close. So when people ask, like, why isn't it valued like an auto company? Well, that's just part of the answer. The other part of the answer is the energy business. The other part of the answer is supercharging, autonomy, what they can do in software and so forth. So I'm going to be interested to see on the partnership side, they want to expand internally first. And I think they're going to work with a Western partner first on integration, but you never know. It could be a surprise. They may launch robotaxi first in China. That may be the first. That could be the first country. We don't know what's on the 8/8. Where should we book our tickets? Should we be in Beijing, or should we be in
boy,
Austin?
Jeff, you're going off the off the range there a little bit, maybe.
Well,
I've
actually,
known to
Elon
do that.
responded to a tweet yesterday. Someone said robotaxi may be coming to China first. And he said, I did choose 8/8 because it's a lucky number in China.
Yeah,
So I
I
think
saw
he
that.
wanted people to see that theory. I think he likes the idea of this sort of regulatory competitive environment. A lot of people have said, oh, regulators are going to be the big holdup. But if you actually pit the regulators against each other and say, launch it in China first, or even threaten to launch it in China first, if the US regulators or European regulators aren't up to speed, then you kind of pit the regulators worldwide against each other to get their act together first so that their country becomes competitive.
Yes, but it can't be launched in China first when they haven't even got FSD trained in the country yet. They need time.
FSD works in China. It works in Europe. It works everywhere, just like it works in the United States.
I got that,
Yeah,
but
It's just as easy to launch a robotaxi there as it is in North America.
But he did say, right? He's mentioned before that different territories, different weather patterns, even Canada. They said it will take a little bit of time before they launched it there. So, okay.
Well, I mean, that was probably from the time of code writing. I want to add to that, and I completely agree with Omar. That's why I said earlier, this is playing India against China, Europe against the United States and all that. That this is really, very wartime Elon. One thing that I'm not sure everybody had noticed, the same day that we had the Baidu Tesla announcement for mapping data, Hyundai and Kia both announced that they are now, for China, getting from Baidu, they've signed a memorandum of understanding to develop the technologies for connected cars. So I think what China has pushed, because Baidu is obviously very close to the Chinese government, is that Baidu is the intermediary for part of the technology. Obviously, Tesla is only using the mapping, but through this Baidu link, we can actually see the others getting to the Tesla software as well. So I do believe in China there are a couple of things happening at the same time, obviously also on the energy side, but keep an eye on Hyundai and Kia, who obviously have chosen the way to go with Baidu as well. That they're part on the connectivity of the cars.
Okay, so Sawyer and Omar, I have a debate that's going on with me and Alexandra. Please tell us your side of it. She somehow thinks that the very first iteration of robotaxi is going to involve not only Tesla-owned cars, but also customer cars. And I'm saying, no, it's going to have to be the very first iteration. The first time they roll this out, it's going to be Tesla-owned cars. Where do you guys think that it's going to
I
happen?
agree with you, Herbert. I would think it would
Yes.
just be like more of like a pilot in a handful of cities, just with Tesla-owned vehicles, and then maybe they'd expand it to customer-owned vehicles. Although, Tesla owners, like 1.8 million of them, or almost, are already using FSD, V12, whatever, and it's pretty close to self-driving. So I could see both arguments, but I would go with Herbert on this one, I think.
Omar, are you there?
Yeah, I think that the plan is definitely to long term at least allow customer cars to give rides. I think the dedicated robotaxi vehicle that they're building will be sold to cars, in addition to Tesla maintaining their own fleet.
Sorry, sold to cars? What?
Sold to customers.
No.
So, it's possible they could start with a Tesla-owned fleet just to, do an initial launch or something. But the plan is definitely for customer-owned cars to be able to operate driverlessly, and I think for the dedicated robotaxi to be a vehicle that's sold to customers as well.
All right, Alexandra, you're all sitting by yourself there.
It's okay, I'll win.
You'll win. Okay, so Sawyer, what's the biggest thing that's happened in the last few days, the last few weeks? Of course, there's the earnings call. Lots of things happened there, and then the China news, and then there's rumors South Korea is also going to adopt FSD as well. You can see changes in their app, the Tesla app there.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts?
I think the China news is probably the easy way out, but I'll go with this big new battery contract that Tesla won. Roughly, I said 650 million. It might be a little bit lower than that, but Tesla removes megapack pricing visibility from their website, so we can't go in there and do the math anymore, unfortunately. And we don't know what megapack prices are at the current time. So, but it's supposed to be, when it's finished, the Collie battery will be the biggest battery in all of Australia at over 2,200 megawatt hours, which is pretty incredible.
Can you guys tell me then, instead of just talking about the good things, what about the bad things? Tell me what's bad that Tesla's doing, because you've just said something that's great that's happening with Tesla Energy. There's great things happening with the bot when they announce that it's going to be sold to customers next year. There's great things happening with FSD. There's great things happening with the car development. Now him clarifying that you're still going to use his existing factories and lines to create new models, and that they'll still be able to hit more than they sold last year. There's certainly a slowdown, and that's just a cyclical happening on auto. But what exactly is Tesla not doing well, slower than most people are expecting?
I mean, arguably, you could say maybe the slower than expected supercharger V4 rollout. I feel like that we all thought it was going to be quicker than it has been. And obviously there was, news today that Tesla was potentially laying off, the supercharger division, or at least some of the people on it. I don't know if that's true or not, but Elon, said about a couple hours ago, Tesla still plans to grow the supercharger network, but just at a slower pace for new locations, and then more focus on uptime, which is the uptime's already been pretty good, like industry leading. I think it's like 99.97% or something. So Elon wants to get to 100, so we'll see if they can do it.
Anyone else can answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, the two pain points I have, and they're not big pain points, obviously, but if you ask for them, is solar and is insurance. I think the insurance rollout is just so much slower than we had all hoped for. But, that's obviously an issue that may not be completely in Tesla's hands.
Can you guys tell me if insurance is actually required for robotaxi to happen?
My theory on the robotaxi, Herbert, to answer your question, is the product is when the physical product is launched, not just the ride hailing app and software enabled in existing Teslas, but I think the car is going to be sold at it's not going to be sold at an MSRP like classic number. I think it's going to be a per month or a per mile number, and they're going to bundle. They'll bundle insurance, they'll bundle all that together, and that whole offering together, because they're going to know the autonomy side, they're going to know the data side, they're going to be able to put a competitive insurance rate down. I think it's going to be very compelling, as long as they can kind of get the cost per mile or cost per month in the vernacular people. I think today the cost per month is how people make decisions on auto purchases. I actually don't think I think it even trumps the full MSRP. So yeah, I think to answer your question, I don't know if it's a requirement, but I think it's going to be important to bundle the two together for robotaxi. In terms of what Tesla's not doing well, I mean, probably the most serious issue is I don't have my Cybertruck VIN. So I think the amount of Cybertrucks in Illinois is a serious problem. Need to work on. No, but I mean, in all seriousness, I think Tesla drew the outline for what's going to happen over the next, year and a half on that earnings call. I think they revealed more than they normally do on an earnings call. But I think the question on people's minds instead, I think they moved past it's a binary thing and they're betting the whole company, and if it's terrible. No, they have an auto business that they say they're going to grow to 3 million units. Okay, well, if there's any more detail of how you're going to grow that to use up that 3 million unit capacity, if it's just launching these vehicles at a lower price point that they talked about before, the 25K car, just any color on that I think would be helpful, because I mean Tesla has an EPS problem. Tesla has to start, I think they've coiled this spring is coiled for a number of quarters in a row now. I think especially with these OpEx moves, I think they may be past the point of compression. I think they may be past the point of compression. Now it's a question of like, what kind of recovery is it? Is it a V recovery? Is it a U-shaped recovery? Like, what is it? So yeah. So I mean, to answer your question, I think okay, over the next 3 to 5 quarters, what does this start looking like? Because to be value at a growth company with it, they've got to start printing these numbers, and hopefully it's not just a binary thing with robotaxi or no robotaxi. So anyway, it's honestly not, it's not short-term thinking. There's a number of quarters between now and them launching this, and I think they need a very robust hardware business with good margins to support the kind of expansion that they're doing. So anyway, if you could say like what it just okay, where do we go from here with 49 cents of EPS, and what does that look like, and how do we kind of get out of that mode? And again, it can't just be like, oh, it's robotaxis or bust. It's more like, okay, well, what's the plan to grow the rest of the business? I'd be more interested to understand, like, on the cost side, are there other big moves? Are they able to? I think they may be getting more and more leverage out of their upcoming products than they've never had before. I don't think suppliers knew about the new vehicles that were discussed on the earnings call. I don't think they heard about it until that earnings call. And so anyway, there's just what does that mean? It may not mean nothing to most people on this call. To me, it's just another point of leverage that they can use on the existing pricing they're getting today, and just saying, hey, look, while everybody's pulling back, we're stepping into this. We're adding more models. We're doing all this, and now you need to come back to like, in order to get on this ride, like, this is what we need you to do on pricing. So anyway, I guess where do we go from here on EPS it would be one challenging thing for them.
Can you see, you said before that with the layoffs and the reorganization, that it wasn't going to be just across the board. It was going to be very specific organizations. Have we seen signs that there's a transformation of the company beyond just, of course, a vehicle company into a subscription, into an AI company, into a robotics AI company? Are we seeing that beyond the investments, right? We heard that they're investing $10 billion in AI on chips versus laying off folks. But do we see reorganization of the company? Like it feels like with some of the top executives who are leaving, and of course it could have been fired as well, that this is wartime CEO Elon coming in and realizing we're at the next phase of the organization. And so we need, he's probably demanding a lot of commitment from them to get to that next stage. And some of them would say, I can't do it. And some of them are probably fired. Any signals you guys can see what might be happening?
No, but I've decided we just have to trust that. We don't have the internals. We don't have, how brutal the shift is going to be. In 100 days, we have Robotaxi unveiled. That's going to be a major step in the story of Tesla. So I don't want to second guess anything. I mean, did I appreciate some of the people that I let go? Of course, very much so. We were all very fond on Investor Day of Rebecca. Most of us interacted with Rohan regularly. So, it's painful because these people, but from there being able to second guess why and how and where's the, was this justified or was this something that was provoked? I have no clue, and I don't think anybody of us has.
I think at a high level, what you've seen is, instead of like, gigafactory announcement after gigafactory announcement or expansion after expansion, you're seeing all of that shift away from that to infrastructure, training, compute capacity, AI resources. So yeah, I think you are seeing a shift. And none of us are experts in how many people you need to have in your supercharging team, but he's obviously done a strategy shift there. And what you have to do is, when you're a leader of a large company or group of people, you have to look at, okay, where's the future lie, and what do my current resources are today? By the way, this is the disconnect from a lot of the analyst community today on the company. They look at where the revenues are coming today, but they don't look at what the company's actually investing in for tomorrow, because that's the big clue about where they're going or where they're taking the company. And it's too much of a leap for some people to understand that, or they just don't, believe it. They want to have something to count. Like, how many like they want to have something. That's why people are like, they're getting off on counting H100s, when you really have to look at like compute capacity. You've got to look at utilization. You got to look at a number of different things, but everybody wants something to count. And the company's giving them that to count, in all honesty. So they're giving them that to count. But you really got to look at where they're spending their money. So yes, they're doing a shift. And the other thing that I think is missed by a lot of analysts is, when Tesla started seeing trouble in the auto market, they saw it first. And the reason they saw it first is they have shorter network latency in their supply chain. They have a faster supply chain and they have a shorter supply chain. So that means they're going to see shit first, and they're going to have to react to stuff first. So when you hear people saying, well, I think everybody else is doing great and Tesla's, they're the only ones having a problem. Tesla is going to see stuff first, based on, and I could actually draw out the network latency of the various supply chain and show them to you. And the fact that, okay, this one is this much shorter, they're going to see stuff literally a quarter, maybe 2 quarters in advance of other companies. The good news about that is they're going to be out of it, and they're going to accelerate out of it faster than those companies. When you have faster network latency, you have a shorter supply chain, you're moving faster, you get into trouble faster, but you get out of it faster as well. And I don't think people are I still don't think people understand that there's kind of a macro auto slowdown happening. I mean, if you look at what Stellantis reported, VW reported, Porsche reported just this morning, I mean, it is slowdowns everywhere. And I still don't think people are understanding that. And I still don't think people are understanding some of the financial engineering of what's going on in some of the quarters as well. But when you look at the inventory, you look at what they're shipping, and you look at what they're doing on pricing, everything they're doing is a couple of steps behind what Tesla's already done. And they're going to have to do it to get rid of the inventory, or they're going to be sitting on that inventory and they're going to screw up their inbound supply chain, and they're going to screw up all the pricing, and they're going to have a clusterfuck on their hands to be, to go through my technical terminology. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point about Tesla's going to steal out of the stuff first, and also they're going to get out of it faster too.
That is an incredible point, and appreciate you sharing that with us, because that is absolutely true what's happening, and you're able to articulate that well. Do you guys feel comfortable that that Tesla has been able to answer this automotive slowdown that's happening to the automotive industry, and that the second wave, they're in between two waves? So they've announced new models using existing lines. They've got the robo-taxi that's coming out. Are you guys comfortable that this will, if there is further reductions, that this will satisfy it? What's your feeling about that?
I mean, I'll just say really quick, they have to get lower cost models out, because it looks like in a lot of the consumer data that consumers are shifting down. A lot of the retail companies are reporting that customers are still spending, but they're downshifting. The other thing that's being reported, and it's kind of in conflict with what I just said, is that like the top 40% of spend is coming from the top 20% of earners. So, and they're and they're fine, they're continuing to spend. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. So it's kind of like, okay, Tesla has that $40,000 plus segment on lock. Like they're doing great. But if people are downshift, and there's this whole segment they just haven't explored, below 30,000, meaningfully below 30,000. So if they get the opportunity to do that, I just think the volumes are gigantic for them if they get the ability to explore those tiers. And I think that's part of the impetus behind pulling in these additional vehicle launches with the new modules that were going to be an input to Unbox to pull them in to this current car line. So I actually think when I study it from a unit economics perspective, it's just such a great move from a capital perspective. It's such a great move from a per unit COGS perspective. And I honestly don't find a lot of fault in it. And what they're actually going to be able to do is the 25K car, that needs to be about $18,000 when it gets to its terminal COGS rate. It's going to get to that peak, or it's going to get to that peak velocity. It's going to get to that terminal COGS rate faster by the portfolio decisions that Tesla just made doing those interim vehicles.
Wow. So Omar, I wanted to ask you this. Are you expecting a Model 3 Lite, or are you expecting a new model, like a Model 3 hatchback, a Model 2 or whatever, Model Q hatchback?
Yeah, I think they were pretty clear on the call that this is not a Model 3. It's not a Model Y. It's a new model that's a lower cost model. This is a vehicle that they've been working on and designing for some time, or actually multiple vehicles. They have steer-by-wire on this vehicle. They have a new battery pack architecture that can handle any cell chemistry that they have. They have these new motors that don't use rare earths. They have this new communication system within the vehicle where it's using the 48-volt architecture for the low voltage architecture and power over Ethernet. So it greatly simplifies the wiring. So a lot of stuff that they've been working on that they were going to put for this new vehicle on the unbox process, but they've just decided that they're not going to build it on a new production line using the unbox process. They're going to use their existing production lines as well. And that should hopefully bring in the time to market and reduce the capex required to ramp it up. So they threw out the number of about, 3 million vehicles they thought they could get to with this ramped, really utilizing their existing capacity much better. So I'm not sure what
Okay.
exactly it is, how different it's going to be than the Model 3 and why. I expect it to be smaller, maybe somewhere around the $30,000 range. But I do think it'll be a new model and not just a new version of the 3 and Y.
Perfect. And then it's another debate Alexandra and I have. We seem to have a number of debates here, Alexandra. Let me make sure I say this properly, but she thinks that there will be cars made that are in the existing production line, that they will just then remove the steering wheel and then that'll be used for the robotaxi. Whereas I think that the robotaxi is going to be an unboxed model. It'll be completely different design, completely different form factor. It'll be robotaxi first, and then all the drivable cars will be built in the existing production lines, existing factories.
Well, you could even take in October 2016 Tesla, once FSD is reliable enough to operate without a driver, and you could just simply remove the wheel and it would still work. So you can definitely do that, especially with steer-by-wire. It becomes even easier. But the purpose-built robotaxi is really designed to be a vehicle that's interior is purpose-built for the purpose of ride sharing, if that makes sense. You can take the existing vehicles and you can remove the steering controls down the line if you need to, even at the factory. But the purpose-built vehicle is really a reimagining of what the vehicle interior and exterior should look like in a ride sharing world. The goal is really just to drive down the cost per mile as much as possible. And rumors and some of the shots we've seen suggest that it could be a two-seater car. The average ride sharing ride is about 1.2 passengers. A two-person car that was smaller and had a really low cost per mile because it's smaller size, needs less battery, less energy to go the same amount of range. That could be a good sort of workhorse for the base load of the network, which is really one or two people rides, food deliveries, things like that that can easily fit in a small car and are actually better suited to a small car. Then I think you have Model 3 and Y and Cybertruck to handle higher levels of demand where you have maybe, a group of 5 people or a ton of stuff that needs a truck or something like that. So I think that's kind of how they're thinking about it. And it's a very different strategy than some of the other robotaxi concepts you've seen from companies like Cruise with their Origin and Zoox with their Zoox car, where they typically have these big boxy cars. They're typically designed to be, they have no front. They can travel front or back, doesn't matter. And, they're typically these big boxy cars with 4 seats facing each other. So you're kind of sitting in there with some strangers staring at each other. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Tesla's vision for what this sort of purpose-built robotaxi would look like is very different. So I'm super excited to see what they've come up with on 8.8.
Okay, let's Tesla Yoda. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I totally agree. I think one factor that will make the robotaxi different is that with the current fleet, you are selling to customers who are owners, and there's a sense of identity, or there's a sense of sort of cachet with what it means to own a vehicle today. With the robotaxi, I think they'll take a first principles design approach whereby it's about mobility. So how do you get from A to B in a most cost efficient and comfortable way? And that may produce an output that's dramatically different from when you own a vehicle. So yeah, definitely agree on a two-seater to start based on the average ride. And one quick thing is I am actually on the side of Alexandra on that. that the robotaxi will be autonomous.
Okay, let's invite a few more folks up here. Let's get Stephen up. Hey, Stephen. Stephen?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Just curious to get your thoughts on the theory I have for the supercharger team being let go. The first theory I have is that we know that volume delivery is going to be relatively flat year over year compared to last year. So maybe Elon is looking to cut capital expenditures and just saying, hey, we have the volume we need of superchargers for the cars that are going to be delivered in this year. So let's just focus on cutting that cost. And then once we ramp up to 3 million deliveries next year, we can go back to developing and delivering superchargers at a high rate. And my second theory is, do you think that this real big push to autonomy is maybe going to be a shift in superchargers to more of a wireless charger, as we've seen being teased, and that may have a change in the direction of the future of the supercharging at Tesla? Thanks.
Anybody want to answer that question?
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense that deployments, there would be some correlation with adoption and deployment. If you were to, put me up against the wall and say, did you agree with the approach and business model on the supercharger and kind of opening it up, I'd say no, I didn't. I agree on opening it up, and I agree on making the barrier to entry low, but not zero. But again, I'm not inside of Tesla. I don't know the economics. I don't know the long-term plan. They could flip that in a moment's notice too and say, hey, look, it said it was, this much to ride before, which is basically, almost nothing. Well, maybe now it's going to cost something. Because look, now look what you're doing. It's a capital intensive business. Ford and GM, I think we're going to invest something on the order of and who knows, this was in their capital plan. They said they pull it out, but something on the order of $700 million on their build out. And here Tesla comes in and says you can use it. And for the world, that's a much more capital efficient approach, and that's great. I would have hoped that they would have been able to extract something for that. Hey, instead of you having to invest 700 million, you two companies, I need this. But yeah, so I think it's definitely going to correlate a bit with what's happening with adoption in the near term. And I think Tesla has a dashboard of statistics. They see what their uptime is, they see what their utilization is, and and they obviously have changed course on on the direction and what they want to do. But yeah, and then with autonomy, I would they should be able to get tremendous reuse out of the existing supercharger stations, and then if there needs to be some sort of wireless addition added to that, you should be able to basically retrofit and have both the wired and wireless charging option, because wireless won't come at the same efficiency, at least in the beginning, as a wired solution. So yeah, I could see them, there could be some strategy around that, but I don't know if that means, I don't know if that has anything to do with the reductions in the supercharger team, to be honest. And we don't know the composition of the 500 people. Is this, is there any manufacturing inside of that number? Is this all engineers and product managers? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe someone else does, but I think that's important to know. Because if you knew the answer to that, Stephen, then maybe there'd be a read through on what they're doing with production going forward. So
yeah, I agree completely. There's a lot of missing information that we don't have, and I think a lot of assumptions are being made based on this 500 number when we really didn't even know how big the team was to begin with. So I'd just say use caution, as a community, to make assumptions based on a lot of information we don't know, like you said.
Yep. What's the price action going to be like? Oh wait, no, wrong Steven. Sorry, I thought you were the other Steven. We have another Steven that does price action on the stock. Sorry.
Oh,
he's
no
in the
worries.
audience. You should come up and tell us what the stock's going to do tomorrow. I'm just kidding. Nobody knows that. All right, thanks.
Okay. So I've got another question to ask you guys with the, tell me if you guys think that as FSD continues to improve, as they announce on 8/8 that robotaxi is something that's going to be coming in the near future, would that not increase the sales of the existing Model 3, Model Y, just because people start realizing that these are robotaxi ready, that they're FSD ready for safety, or as some people say, 99.5% of people have no idea this is happening. It won't even be something that will register with them. But at some point, it will. Do you guys think that that's going to increase the sales of existing Model 3, Model Ys and increase its TAM, addressable market that it could be sold to? Because these are no longer just cars. They are now, I like to steal this from somebody. They're no longer car makers. They're now automakers. These are autonomous cars.
Yeah, I can take that. I do believe it does, and I actually think there is no better value than purchasing a used Model 3 or Model Y now, because given at what prices they are now on the secondary market, I think that's just a great deal. I'm only 100 days away from August 8th. And the probability that you can sooner or later integrate, that I think it's sooner or later integrate in the robotaxi network. If that is what you want to do with your car, that's the moment to do it. So I don't know whether this month we still had transfer of FSD possible or not. So that, that could be also an argument for that, because that's not going to stay there. There's just no way that FSD will remain transferable, and everybody understands why. So yes, I do believe that it will re-become, and I know it's been tough for a secondary market of Teslas for the last 15, 16 months, because obviously the value's depreciated a lot with the price cuts, but I do believe it will become again an appreciating asset very quickly.
Okay, and Jeff and Omar, can you guys answer that question?
What was the question?
Whether or not you think that FSD, as it improves, and then the announcement of 8/8 and robotaxi, if that's going to increase sales of the existing Model 3, Model Ys, or if it's going to take forever before people even register that these are now autonomous, capable cars.
I think it will increase the sales. I mean, this product today is a life-changing product. Now, I don't know, there's obviously other factors at play in the economy, things like that, but broadly, I think as people try this, experience this, learn about it, and try it, it changes the way you commute, it changes the way you connect with your city, travel. It's essential, and I think once you get used to it, you don't want to go back to any car that doesn't have it.
Okay, Jeff, are you going to answer?
Yeah, no, I think it does. It's more about this. It's more about awareness and discoverability, and just knowing it. I think there's still reasonably low awareness of it and how good it is. So yeah, but naturally, like if there's added functionality that Tesla reveals on 8/8, like your car used to be able to do this, now it can do this. I mean, that's going to be pretty powerful for existing owners, and and I think it may compel some new owners. And I don't see Tesla. I think they're still going to be very competitive on pricing at that point. And so yeah, I do. I think it can definitely drive sales.
Okay. Oh, why? How did everybody get muted? How did that happen? Unmute everybody. That wasn't me, right? Okay, so let's talk stock. I'm trying to bring up Stock Talk Weekly here, but the stock jumped on earnings the day right after earnings, and then it jumped again because of the China FSD, the Elon's visit to China. Do you guys think that this jump, and I think you told me this, Jeff, that the volume is incredibly high, the volume of stock the trading is so high that it must be more than just the retail. We've now seen 4 of the major institutional analysts come around and they're flip-flopping. Now they're so bullish on Tesla. At least that's what they're now saying. Do you think that this is a permanent shift? Is it just a temporary shift? Is this a recognition that Tesla's now a different company? Finally, they're being seen as a robotics AI company, or this is just one news that was unexpected. It pops. What's your thoughts on the price action? Go ahead. Who wants to go next?
I can go. We should get stock talk up. There was tremendous volume on the following day of that announcement. And I'm not sure if it was all options related, if it was, it's hard to know like who's buying, but I think it was like over like 260 million shares and the average is around 100 million. So that's fairly significant of a stock, price of this value. It's, tossing around a, $600 billion company like that. So there's definitely some significant movement in terms of the shares on these days. So it seems like it woke up. Like it's always been a very like highly traded stock, but it seemed like it was kind of in a bit of a lull and just being kind of driven lower. And it looked like it definitely woke up. But technically, it's got a number of barriers above it that it would have to break through to get kind of healthy from a technical perspective. I think it kind of sprung up between maybe the 50 and the 100 day. It's got a long way to go to the 200 day technically, but these are all technical indicators. I think the news of like, you have a couple of million cars in China and you have the biggest EV population on the planet, and you're going to put this software in that, eventually will be, driverless at scale. I think that, shareholders rejoiced. And I also think, Tesla's got very good footing. Elon showing face in China. That's a very important thing for the company. A tremendous amount of production and tremendous amount of sales come out of China. So that's a very important thing. They put up a pretty decent number for units out of China. I think almost 15,000 yesterday. So things are kind of, at least starting to move in the right direction. They got to get a lot healthier for them in China. The competition's kind of ramping up. So I think it was a reaction, a bit of a reaction to that. And I think a lot of people were on not a lot of people, but I think you had some short covering occurring. So there's definitely some mechanical things occurring with that kind of move in one single day. But Stock Talk may have more to say on that.
Stock Talk. Can you join in and
Sorry, I just jumped in here. What was the topic?
We just switched it because we saw you on the audience. We want to talk Tesla stock. What's your feeling and analysis of why Tesla jumped on earnings, jumped again in China news? Of course, it's new news and investors like it, but now you're seeing the bears turning a little bit more bullish. At least they're saying so. What's your read on why this happened? And is this more semi-permanent, semi-transformative for the company, or is just a blip for now and people still completely misunderstand the company?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's still a lot of people that misunderstand the company, but all of these events have to be interpreted, in my view at least, in terms of what your lens is like from a time horizon standpoint. I think the China news is great. I mean, I think expanding FSD internationally is a huge opportunity. I think it's also a demonstration of confidence from Tesla and the technology to be willing to, sell it internationally. I think is a demonstration of internal confidence in the technology. So I'm not surprised the stock reacted positively to it, but the expectations going into that Tesla earnings report were very low. And sentiment had been, degrading for several months prior to that report. So, there was a setup there where, ramping short interest headed into the report and a lot of negativity for an upside surprise. And I think Elon did a very good job on the call. And I kind of talked about this post call, but I think he did a very good job of managing the narrative, which from a stock price action standpoint, narratives are important, right? Like I personally just think of stocks as tickers with narratives. That's how I like to phrase them. But the narrative was bad, and he did a good job of turning that narrative around. Now, fundamentally speaking, it's a bit of a more nuanced story than that, and it's going to take a long time for a lot of these things to culminate. FSD is a very promising technology. I think I loved that Elon made the statement on the earnings call that if you don't believe in FSD, you shouldn't invest in the stock. I couldn't agree with that more. I think if you own the stock for the car business, I think you're crazy, frankly. Um, Realistically speaking, it is a binary outcome. And the development of that technology is of enormous importance to not only the growth of the company but the valuation of the company, which is obviously relevant to the stock price. So I think Tesla is in the best position to solve it. I wouldn't own the stock if I didn't believe that, and I don't think anyone should own the stock if they don't believe that. But short-term stock price performance is very different from long-term stock price performance. And while a lot of these developments are good for the long-term outlook of the company, FSD namely, the Optimus program as well, of course, there are a lot of short-term headwinds, and you have to be frank about that from a fundamental standpoint. There are still going to be very big headwinds to volume growth this year. The street will not like that. How they come in relative to expectations, that's an entirely separate conversation. Maybe we set up again going into the next report where expectations are so brutalized that it sets up for, they didn't even beat expectations this time. It was more so the narrative change that let the stock get propelled. So I think there are still short-term fundamental headwinds from both a volume growth standpoint, potentially a margin standpoint, although I think you can make the argument that margins bottomed last quarter. And more importantly, from a reorganization standpoint, because from what I've seen in the past couple of weeks, it seems apparent to me that Elon is attempting to shift this company, and it's not going to happen overnight, but is attempting to shift this company to a more asset light, labor light business that has a greater focus on software and can thereby drive higher margins. That's how you get to the margin profile that you want to get to. You get there by having less people work for you, less physical asset investment, really less capex in the long term. Although in the short term, it's going to require an enormous boom in capex. And so that's going to weigh on margins too. And so the fundamental story is, I would say, complicated and nuanced in the short term, and there are plenty of headwinds that are objectively true. In the long term, I think a lot of this initiative is promising, and it's the right move to generate long-term value, because you do need margins to go sustainably higher. You need to have higher margin products. You need to have a greater mix in the revenue mix of software, and you need to have exciting new products on the suite. And I think they've done all of those things. So yeah, I think what the stock has done in the last couple of weeks is less relevant than what these changes mean for the company going forward. And I think they're the right long-term decisions, even though they may scare some people in the short term.
That was a perfect answer. Thank you, Stock Talk. Do you think that the kind of investors has changed? Right? Was there a culling of the people who were bulls, but then they got scared and they started believing that the stock's going to keep falling? They got out, and then there's new entrants of new people who are discovering Tesla. I'm sure there's no way to know this, but what's your sense of what's happening there?
I think there's always been two cohorts of, I shouldn't even say always been, but I think in the last 5 years, there's been really two cohorts of the shareholder base. You have retail shareholders and speculative tech investors like myself and like Jeff and many other people who focus on the tech industry and who are willing to pay a premium for some speculative value. That's one cohort of investors. And then you have a cohort of investors who, and by the way, I'm not knocking the other cohort, but you have a cohort of investors who are entirely focused on what a Wall Street analyst would think about the current situation, or the forward-looking quarter or the forward-looking 5 quarters. That's an entirely different perspective to take, and in fact, you can't even interpret any of the information the same way. If you take the speculative perspective, then you can assign some sort of value that you think things like robotaxi and Optimus will be worth, right? But those opinions will largely be variable. You're not going to have a number where you can be like, hey, it's going to be a $3.2 trillion industry by 2030. That's just an absurd thing to expect. And so what ends up happening is you have this wide range of expectations where some people think it's going to be meaningful to the business, but they don't think it's going to be game changing. Other people think it's going to triple the size of the business. Other people think it's going to 10x the size of the business. And so you have this huge spectrum of expectations. And there's different cohorts of the shareholder base that are sitting at each of those points of the spectrum. And so do I think this earnings call brought in new investors? Maybe. I mean, there's no way for me to objectively determine that. But I do think it was a narrative shift. So to the extent that you believe it was a big enough narrative shift to draw in new investors, sure. I don't think that's a crazy point to make. I think, yeah, sure. Maybe some new investors came in.
How important is it that institutional investors are turned around? Some people think that they're critical. You can't just stay with the retail. And then now we're starting to see some of them tell the story, which they never used to be. Tesla's an energy company. Now they're saying Tesla's an FSD and robotaxi company. And soon they'll be talking about Tesla's an AI and bot company. But right now, you're watching them transform over time because they're laggards. How important is it that the institutionals finally see the story of Tesla?
I mean, look, the idea, we had this debate. I mean, I remember having this debate like 4 or 5 years ago with the very early Tesla bears. And the idea that Tesla is just a car company is obviously absurd. I mean, everyone knows that they're not just a car company now. I think if you make that argument, then you're just being facetious to an extent. But the reality is this: is that when we have that conversation, we shouldn't be having it in this intangible way. In other words, we shouldn't be saying, Tesla's clearly not just a car company because look at these other things they're selling. Well, yeah, of course. But what matters to the street and what matters to analyst expectations is, are those other components of the business a material contributor to the earnings power of the company? That's what matters, right? We can speculate ad nauseum on what we think Optimus will be worth, what we think Cybertruck business at peak capacity will be worth, what we think FSD will be worth when it's being sold everywhere. I mean, I'm bullish on all those things too. I think some people's estimates are a little too high. I think some people's estimates are a little too conservative. But yeah, I'm bullish on all of those categories too. The issue is that we can model these things in theory, but until the numbers are actually shown to the street, you're just not going to get enough credit for it. You're going to have some analysts that are willing to step out onto the road and say, I think this business is going to be worth, an additional $3 trillion to the top line. There's going to be analysts that are willing to make that call, that are bold, and a lot of times those are the analysts that lead on trends and new technologies. But broadly speaking, a lot of the street is going to want to see changes in the fundamental business that reflect the change in the strategy. And sometimes the lag between those two things can be a lot longer than people expect. So people have to be reasonable, I think, about combining their bullishness about the future products and the total addressable markets of the future products while balancing that with the fundamental headwinds and the capex that are needed to achieve those products. And in the gap of time between those two periods, there are headwinds like margin headwinds, capex headwinds, employment relief. There's going to be all of these different chapters of the story that are necessary to get to the end point of churning the business into this asset light model that is driven by software, that has higher margins on its product suite. That's a very different looking company from what Tesla looks like today.
Yeah,
What do you think? Just one question, Herbert, please. How long do you think this is going to take? Because you've seen stuff in your life. Because this is a huge turn. What's happening now?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question, which is Apple, right? Same stories. How do I be seen as a subscription, not and hardware? Does it take 20% of revenue before we get there?
It might. That's an impossible question. I mean, I can give you a number. There's no way for me to know. But yeah, 15, once you start getting to 15, 20, 25, 30% of bottom line earnings power, now you're talking about a primary driver of the business. Maybe it doesn't take that long. Maybe people start extrapolating once we get to, 15% of earnings power. I don't know what it's going to take, but the reality is at some point the street will become convinced that these emerging businesses will become bigger than the core business. And that's what you need them to believe if you want them to buy into the narrative of like multi-trillion-dollar market access, right? Because there are people on the street that believe that that's going to happen, right? There's people, that have believed that that's going to happen for quite some time. But there's a much larger cohort that is just not willing to model that in until they see it in the numbers. And to be fair, I think both sides have a point. Again, I'm a speculative tech trader and investor. So for me, I'm willing to speculate. I'm willing to assign companies premium and value for things that I think they might do, or even better, things that I think they're in the best position to do versus all of their competitors, which is how I feel about Tesla. Now, me being willing to do that and a handful of other analysts on the street willing to do that is not enough. You need to have data that can make everybody give the thumbs up signal. That's how you get stocks that just consecutively outperform for 20, 25 years straight. Like, that's what it takes. It's just the reality of the situation. I wish it was different. I wish everyone was like a dreamer on the street, but they're not. They're not. Not everyone is product driven on the street. In fact, you can show somebody very impressive product and they'll be like, okay, how are you going to monetize it? What does the scale look like? What does the margins look like? How many people are actually going to buy it? What does international expansion look like? What are the hurdles? Are there tariffs in place? Like, all of these questions are the first 20 questions you're going to get if you show an impressive product to a diligent analyst. But those questions should be asked, right? Because otherwise we just be living in a butterfly world where anytime a cool technology product comes out, the company should be assuming the entire market capitalization of the potential market. I mean, come on, we know that's a silly way to do things, and the market has phases where it does this. I mean, all of us were in the markets in 2020. I'm sure you guys remember the SPAC boom. Okay, and there were all of these companies going public that had these very, very convincing presentations talking about how their cutting edge technologies are going to address, $800 billion TAMs in 3 years. And you were talking about companies that went public at $1, $2, $3 billion valuations. So what happened? They got inflated to 60, 70, 80, 90, $100 billion valuations, like Nikola, Lucid Motors, all of these stocks. What happened to them now? Most of them are penny stocks. In fact, most of them are delisted. Many of them are penny stocks. Very few are even trading above net asset value, which is where they started. 99% of SPACs from the EV bubble during 2020 and 2021 are worthless. What does that tell you? That tells you that there are these waves of speculative enthusiasm that produce value that it has to cool off when interest rates are 5% for a year. I mean, people are astonished by volatility and they always want an explanation for why. Like, when people were talking about Tesla stock underperforming, it was just frankly not even conversation worthy to me at the time, because this is a stock that gained an enormous amount of market capitalization in a very short period. And you're sitting in a market environment where capital is extremely hard to raise, economic activity is being affected by 5% interest rates. This is not the type of environment where you can rein in that speculative enthusiasm and sustain it for a long period of time. So I'm willing to speculate. A lot of other investors are willing to speculate. I think probably most owners of Tesla stock are willing to speculate. But convincing the street to do the same is an entirely different proposition. It requires an entirely different set of data. The product itself is never enough.
So, Alexander, do you need the street? And of course, you probably do. If today you have we're not in a risk-on environment, we don't have money flowing, retail's just not going to be enough, right? Although Dan Lee says that there's trillions of dollars sitting on the sidelines. Do you need the street?
Do we need the street to finally come around?
Yeah.
Well,
or can this just be all retail bumping the stock up? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I actually think retail has all interest to wait for the street to come as late as possible, because most people are in the same situation than me. They believe in the story. They have time. I mean, if you need the money in the next 6 months to 2 years, that's probably not for you. But everybody else who has time, who has this money on retirement accounts and has got 10 years to go, if not more, they want to continue to dollar cost average into the stock, and they're not in a hurry for the street to understand what's happening. So, I mean, what happened obviously the last couple of days is heartwarming, because it's been so beaten down, and it gives you more of an uplift rather than always have bad news. But in the end, it doesn't matter if you don't need to trade the stock, if you don't go in margin, if you don't go into options, and if you're still in your phase where you're accumulating. So we've said it lots of times, everybody has to understand before they even start as a retail investor to start buy stock is how long is your time horizon, and how how solid is your belief and how much homework did you do for a certain stock. If that's all good, you have time.
Go ahead, Philip.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Herbert, for including me. This is my first time participating in this kind of event. One thing I wanted to ask you all is regarding the supercharger news today and the decrease in that workforce. I'm curious, given that Elon is so mission focused and cutting back on supercharging infrastructure just doesn't feel like it's part of his mission. And I'm curious if we know anything about what the deal structure looked like with all these OEMs that are now agreeing to use the supercharger network. And do they have any requirement to build additional supercharger infrastructure per Tesla's design spec? Curious to your thoughts.
Alexander, you answered that earlier, didn't you?
I did, and I don't mind saying it again. Hi, Philip, and glad to have you here. So first of all, I don't think anybody can second guess what happens here. This could have been a very short-term decision because something really happened. This could have been a longer plan. Who knows? And it doesn't matter, right? I mean, we have to see the end of it. The result is that at the moment they will not concentrate on opening more new locations, but rather making sure uptime is optimized and they're extending current locations. I mean, I'm traveling extensively on the West Coast. I never had an issue finding a supercharger. And other than on certain public holidays, and probably in a total of 3 over the last 4 years, I never had to wait. So I understand what's happening. I don't believe there is a promise from Tesla to the other OEMs about availability. I would doubt that because, apparently they didn't have to pay for the licensing deal. So I wouldn't see that Tesla would engage into any of these promises against nothing. And I've cited before this article that Dana Hull just wrote on Bloomberg, where they are actually embarrassed because they were leaning on Tesla to do their work. So this may actually be a wake-up call for them to continue doing their investments into the superchargers of their own brand. I mean, emotionally, I don't like it. I feel bad for the people that had to learn that news over the last couple of days. But it is now what it is. And I mean, all the superchargers still work, right? I don't think that any of the superchargers today are not working. I hear that some of the suppliers and subcontractors that Tesla is using can't reach their typical point of contacts at the moment. That seems normal. And I also hear that, and that was actually in that article, in that Bloomberg article, that they are starting to rehire some of those people. So it looks to me, but what do I know, of a big clean out and then hiring back the essential ones, and probably could have happened in a different setting, but it is what it is. All the rest from my side will be just pure speculation.
Okay, so watch this masterful transition. I'm going to combine this conversation with a conversation we had earlier about FSD and stock talk. So what will happen? So first of all, how likely is it that we're going to hear partnerships for licensing of FSD from other companies? What will happen once one happens? Is it a given that we'll see many of them jumping on board? And then stock talk, what would happen to the stock if you hear an announcement of an FSD partnership?
It's going to depend on a couple things. So first of all, do I think it's going to happen right now? No. Do I think it could happen by the end of the year? I mean, Elon said so we'll see. I think there's one decision that's being weighed right now. First point I'll make is that from a technology development standpoint, Tesla has no competitor when it comes to FSD. And that point needs to be made because people feel like the Waymo program is a competitor. And There's a very simple reason why it's not. It's because it's fundamentally different in terms of the strategy it is attempting to use to solve global autonomy. Having to map every city you go to is not a sustainable solution to solve global autonomy. It just wouldn't work. In fact, if Waymo wanted to, let's say, expand to China like Tesla's doing, they would have to get regional government permission to map those cities and then map them on an individual basis. It's just like how in San Francisco, with a Waymo can't take you to the airport because it's outside of the zone, but a Tesla with FSD can, right? So that distinction is important to make. And so when you keep that distinction in mind, there are no competitors developing a general autonomy system for a vehicle who at the same time also own an enormous fleet of vehicles. There are no competitors that meet those two qualifications. So from that standpoint, probability says Tesla will solve it first. When will they solve it? I don't know. I wouldn't even want to give a date because I just think we're just guessing. I mean, Elon has thought was gonna be solved by the end of the year many times in the past. And I'm not knocking Elon for that. I'm just saying if he, who is the most intimate with the technology, sometimes feels that they're at the top of the bell curve when they're not, I mean, who are any of us to speculate on when it's going to be done? So I have no idea when it'll be done. But I do think Tesla's in the driver's seat for accomplishing it, and they probably have the highest probability of accomplishing it. As of what it'll do for the stock, it depends on a lot of things. First of all, it depends on regulatory approval. Now, some people believe that if Tesla can prove that from a utilitarian standpoint, the technology objectively saves lives. I don't know how they would go about doing that, but whatever method they try to use to prove that, then that could be a convincing reason to say regulatory approval will happen pretty easily if they can prove that they're saving an enormous amount of lives. Again, I don't know how to do that because I haven't thought about what would be the most effective way to do that. But if anyone has ideas, that's great. But my point is, if they can do that, that'll be step one. And step two will be, if they are licensing it to other automakers, at what price are they licensing it to other automakers? And what does the take rate look like at those automakers? Because take rate needs to go way up at Tesla, I think, before these guys are going to sign a licensing deal, to be frank. Because when people say, well, what's the downside if they don't have their own products? The downside is concession. Okay. If you license Tesla's product and you're GM, you are essentially conceding that, you're not going to attempt to develop your own autonomous program anytime in the near future. And so that's a huge market opportunity that you're conceding as a competitor. You need to be abundantly sure that it's going to be worth it to your bottom line before you make that decision. And at Tesla's current take rate, I'll be frank, if I was Ford, I would not take that deal. And that's the difference, is that Tesla is going to have to prove to the other automakers that they can significantly boost take rate and retention of the software, and make it basically indispensable to their own customers. And at that juncture, they can not only charge a lot more for it, but they will find the other automakers to be a lot more amenable to making that concession. So I've tried to view everything from a realistic standpoint. I'm bullish on the technology. I think they're in the best seat to solve it. I think they have the highest probability to solve it. But from a competitive standpoint, keep in mind, all these other guys are selling cars too. And they got to sell their car over Tesla's car. So the software has to be incredibly compelling before they'll make that decision.
Isn't part of that? By the way, I agree with that in general. But isn't part of that too them Tesla competitors kind of extrapolating where they're at today on their own solution, their own burn rate, and answering question number one: are we where Tesla is today, both on performance and unit economics? And then question number two: 3 years from now, where do we think Tesla is going to be if we extrapolate their performance, both on again on performance and unit economics, and where will we be? So I think that's a big part of the equation too, not just the Tesla side alone in isolation. But in general, I agree with you.
No, I agree with that as well. I mean, they are. I mean, these guys are probably looking at their own software teams, which, frankly, most of the legacy OEMs don't have much of a software team at all, and they're asking themselves, like, is this a venture we can afford to foray into, or would even be remotely successful at, and that's going to be another part of the equation. So I agree.
Yes, but once there is an announcement, like you said, let's say sometime the end of this year, one or maybe two, what will happen to the stock? Just an announcement that there
Depends on
is
the
a
price. Depends on the price and depends on the take rate. I mean, look, do I think the stock would go crazy if that was announced? Yeah, I think the day one reaction would probably be pretty crazy. Okay, but what I like to think about is sustainable stock moves, right? Like, let's use Google as an example. Okay, so I'm a Google shareholder. Google had an excellent quarter this quarter, and the stock was up, 15% post earnings. Okay, stock was trading up to like 180. Okay, today, 2 days later, it's down to 162 after a fantastic quarter, like across the board, beat on every metric. Cloud growth was like insane. Net income growth on cloud was like a 400% gain year over year. So it's just a crazy report, right, from a massive company, and that move got faded, right? So what matters is sustainable stock moves. It's not about like, oh, what will the stock do the day it's announced? Okay, that's great. I mean, the stock could go up 20% the day it's announced, but that's less relevant than the details of what that package would look like. So that's what'll matter, is what cost is that licensing agreement at? What is the projected take rate? Because whatever kind of licensing agreement they sign, they're not just gonna. I mean, there'll probably be some kind of base amount, but it'll be largely dependent on how many of their customers option to use the software. And if that take rate is insignificant, then the contract will be insignificant. I mean, it's just math, right? I mean, and they can't charge an enormously higher amount to the people licensing the software, because then they won't sign the licensing agreement, because then they'll be like, now you're adding a price benefit to your own vehicle. So they're likely going to want the same price to their customers that Tesla is charging to its own customers. So that's $99 a month, right? You'd have to have an insane amount of people that sign up to that for that to be meaningful revenue, right? You have a lot of people sign up to that. So I mean, just the number, we have to be just think about the numbers in a realistic way. I mean, like, I've been in the Tesla bull community for many years, and the one thing that I always kind of maybe not butt heads on, but just try to like sober people up about is just do the numbers in your head and look at the market cap and ask yourself, how do you think the street will respond? And a lot of people, you know, we get, look, I'm a tech bull in general. Okay. I love technology companies. It's all I focus on. I'm like, I hate technology. People who are skeptical of technology, I don't hate them, but I mean, I just hate the idea of being skeptical of technology. To me is just such a losing war and has been for so long. But at the same time, being fascinated with technologies and the wonder of them and what amazing things they can do for society, that is an entirely separate conversation from producing, monetizing, marketing, overcoming stigmas. All of those things are way harder, right? Like 100 magnitudes harder. Like, and that's the difference, and that's why, like, I mean, that's why 99% of tech startups die, because they become obsessed with the promise of the product and don't focus enough on the actual business that is required to sustain the product. And that's the biggest thing that I think sometimes people are overlooking when they get excited about new technologies. And trust me, like I said, I'm one of those people that's very excited about these technologies too, but there has to be like an element of like, what does the basic math look like? How many millions of subscribers would you need? I mean, vehicle sales aren't as, I think, high as people think they are globally, And like, I just think sometimes people are imagining markets that probably won't expand in the way that they think they will. Like, I think EV adoption is going to take over the car market. I think you go much higher than where it is today, but nobody's going to sell 50 million units a year. Like, that's not going to happen. And this argument that FSD will boost the amount of car sales in the world, like, I think in a very short-term basis, that's true. But I think in a long-term sustainable outlook, that doesn't make any sense. You know, you would need less vehicles that could drive more miles constantly without any sort of labor input. The math doesn't make sense long term. So a lot of this stuff is just basic math. And to be honest, I'm a guy that reads analyst reports every day. Most of it's bullshit, but the guys that are doing analysis are doing it. They use a lot of fancy words, but they're doing it in a very rudimentary way. They just need to see a path for the math to make sense. And so the terms of whatever that agreement might be, whenever it's signed, are very, very important. That agreement needs to be profitable from the jump. If it is profitable from the jump, if whatever licensing agreement they sign is a 10 or 15% boost to earnings power, the stock will go crazy. And that will be a sustainable move. But I don't know what the package is going to look like. I don't know what Elon's plan is to do this. But if it is a very profitable licensing agreement, yes, the stock will go crazy. So that was a roundabout way to answer your question.
No, perfect answer, because that is the concern that Alexandra has. Elon did indicate that he might partner. He remember he saw that Omar tweet, and he said even if it's just at cost or even free, he might do it, and that would not be from the jump, like you're saying. Good for Tesla at the beginning. So good. Alexandra, do you have any comments on this question?
No, I think it was very good summed up. Thanks a lot, Dr.
Perfect. Sock Talk, thank you so much for your very eloquent answers. Fantastic commentary. Appreciate everybody joining. We do this space every week on Tuesdays. Appreciate everybody. Follow us. This is Cyberbulls. See you guys next time. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.